Fame and fortune can vanish in a single moment. A swerve on the highway, a wave that pulls too hard, a stranger watching your house from the shadows. Football gives these men everything the world can offer, but it's never once made them untouchable. These are the times the biggest names in the sport looked death directly in the eye. And somehow live to tell the story. We start inside a home that should have been the safest place on earth. Early 2021, Angel Di Maria and his PSG teammates were riding a hot streak, silencing every critic who said their form wouldn't last. Midway through a match, they were leading comfortably. Something happened that had nothing to do with football. In the 62nd minute, phones across the squad started buzzing all at once. Coaches looked confused. Players glanced toward the bench. Then Di Maria was pulled straight off the pitch mid-match and rushed out of the stadium in front of a stunned crowd who had no idea what they'd just witnessed. His family was in danger. Criminals had been watching his house for weeks, waiting for the one day they knew he'd be gone. Game day gave them their opening. With only his wife and 2 young daughters home, armed men broke in, held them hostage, and stripped the house of everything valuable, walking away with roughly $600,000 in jewelry before vanishing in a getaway car like something scripted for a heist film. It wasn't even the first time his home had been targeted. After this second break-in, Di Maria brought in round-the-clock security for his entire family. This was no longer just about his own safety on the pitch. It was about whether his children were safe in their own bedrooms. Now, here's a story that started before its subject could even speak a single word. In 1992, 4-month-old Neymar was riding through the mountains of Brazil with his parents when a violent storm rolled in out of nowhere. Rain came down so hard, visibility dropped to almost zero, swallowing the road ahead of them. Then, through the darkness, headlights appeared, coming straight at them. The impact was brutal. Neymar's father's hip dislocated on contact. His leg twisted beneath him, certain in that instant that he wasn't going to survive the night. But his fear wasn't for himself. In the wreckage, his baby son was gone. He searched the crushed car, the wet pavement, the bushes along the mountainside. Nothing. For a moment, in the pouring rain, he feared the absolute worst. Then, through the chaos, he heard crying. Neymar was wedged beneath the driver's seat, blood running from a cut where broken glass had sliced into his scalp. His parents got him to a hospital as fast as the wrecked roads would allow, not knowing if their son would make it through the night. He pulled through. His father would later say he knew from that day forward his son was meant for something bigger than any of them could have imagined. From a storm on a mountain road to a storm nobody saw coming on a lake. It was the 4th of July, 2017, and Matheus Silva and his teammates decided to spend the morning at Lake Tahoe before their game later that afternoon. They arrived early to beat the holiday crowds, music blasting the whole drive up, everyone buzzing with the carefree summer energy. The moment Silva saw the water glittering in the sun, he took off running and dove straight in without a second thought, swimming out further than anyone expected. His teammates watched him glide out past the buoys, laughing about it from the shore, until he started screaming. At first they thought he was messing around, the way guys do on a beach trip. Then he went under and didn't resurface. Panic set in instantly. They sprinted into the water, dragged him back to shore, and realized with horror that he wasn't breathing. No pulse. A lifeguard came sprinting over and began CPR right there on the sand, but nothing was working. Paramedics were called in immediately, as his teammates stood frozen, watching their friends slip away in real time. 2 days later, Silva woke up in a hospital bed, confused, disoriented, with no memory of how he got there. He'd been in a coma the entire time. It turned out the lake water was far colder than anyone realized, and the shock of it had sent his heart straight into cardiac arrest the second he hit the surface. Without his teammates pulling him out when they did, he wouldn't have survived. Once word got out that he'd recover, teammate Chris Wondolowski wore his number 38 jersey in their very next match and scored a goal that night in his honor. If Silva's brush with death came from the water, Messi's came from doing exactly what he does best under the brightest lights in the world. 2017 Champions League quarterfinals, Barcelona trailing Juventus 3-0 from the first leg. Messi knew if his team didn't produce something close to a miracle, their entire European run was finished. Both sides fought through a scoreless, physical first half with legacies on the line. Then, in the closing minutes before halftime, Messi went all in on one final desperate play, throwing his body into a challenge without hesitation, and it very nearly ended his life. Doctors would later confirm that if he had landed just 2 millimeters differently, the injury to his neck could have killed him instantly, right there on the pitch in front of thousands. Barcelona lost the tie that night, eliminated from the competition, but Messi walked off that field, lucky to be walking at all. And then there's the time Cristiano Ronaldo's need for speed nearly cost him everything he'd worked for. January 8th, 2009. Just 3 days after buying a brand new Ferrari, Ronaldo overslept the morning of an emergency team practice, called in after a painful loss the team was desperate to bounce back from. He woke up to a phone full of missed calls and messages, and just 20 minutes to cross the entire city if he wanted to make it in time. There was only one car sitting in his garage fast enough to get the job done. Getting into it was almost the last decision he ever made. By the time it was over, Ronaldo was climbing out of a Ferrari that had been reduced to a mangled, unrecognizable wreck on the side of the road. That he escaped without a single scratch on his body is something even he still calls a miracle to this day. From that moment forward, he committed himself completely to the sport, channeling everything into becoming the greatest to ever play the game. Every one of these players walked away from a moment that could have ended everything. Their careers, their families, their lives, all in the space of a few terrifying seconds. The fame, the trophies, the millions of fans watching from the stands, none of it matters in the moment when life itself is hanging in the balance. And if you want to know about saddest moments in football history that break every football fan heart, then must watch this video.